So let's say you're planning to start your next big SaaS project and you're kind of like lost among all the different libraries and tools and the configurations that goes behind setting up a project. I mean, what framework should I choose? What linting library? How do I implement authentication? How it goes with payments? All of this kind of stuff. If you're still wondering about all of those and all the plethora of configuration files that goes into creating or starting on new projects, I mean, you are in the right place, because in this video, we're going to go through all the steps that needs to configure for setting up a fully functional project from start to finish, from going through all the steps that needed to create your next SaaS project. All right, so the first and the most important part of starting out any projects, or especially a SaaS project, since you want to actually make it fast and quick and actually build the application, so you want to go with a framework. You don't want to start from scratch. You don't want to build your own framework. You just want to use an already existing framework. There's a bunch of them and all of them are great. So just pick up a framework and get started with it. And so because we're React lovers and, Next.js is dominating in this field of React, and it's actually a really great framework beside what people don't like about, what Vercel is doing right now and serverless stuff and Next.js. And sometimes, there's bad things, but I believe the latest version that was just recently announced on May 23rd, which is Next.js 15, which is currently on the RC, is a pretty good version. It has, no kind of forced caching and stuff. It has really, really decent features, and sort of like the Next.js framework is pretty powerful compared to what features it has to offer. So get started with Next.js, you just simply go to nextjs.org and you can just go ahead into the getting started here. You can read more about it if you're not familiar with it, but you probably already are familiar with it. So you want to just go ahead and actually set up that one. So you go to installation in here and you want to use a tool set made by the Vercel team themselves, which is the team behind Next.js. It's called the Create Next app in here. That's basically going to allow you to create a project and set up everything from you, from like ES lanes, adding Tailwind for you, so you don't have to spend hours and hours installing all of those. This kind of like CLI or tool set will help you actually do the majority of the setup work. So just simply go ahead and copy this one if you're using NPX, or if you want to use PNPM or something, you can do that as well. So to get started with the project, of course, you go ahead and you need a terminal. So you open up a terminal in here. You're going to just go ahead and do PNPM create. I'm choosing PNPM specifically, but if you go with Yarn or NPM, you can use NPX for NPM, or Yarn is basically the same thing as PNPM. PNPM in here is a really great package manager. I really advise you guys to go ahead and check it out if you haven't already. But to get started with that, so just PNPM create and you do next dash up in here and you do at latest. So just go ahead and click enter, and this will go ahead and prompt you with a bunch of questions just for you to go ahead and do the setup. So the first thing in here, what you want to name your project. So for example, we can do SaaS sort of template or something, or boilerplate or something, whatever you want to call it. So I can just go name this one. Would you like to use TypeScript? Definitely yes, and I would recommend everybody to use TypeScript in here. Just the code quality is going to be way much better, but even though you're going to spend a little bit more time defining types and using types, but still code quality is going to be improved quite a lot. So just go ahead and use TypeScript in here. Just go ahead and click yes. Yes, I want to use TypeScript. Would you like to use ESLint? Yes, ESLint is just basically for linting your code and telling you if you are writing bad code or stuff like that, just like warning you and telling you you can't write this bad code in here. Please remove this and replace it with this. So I'm going to click yes in here. Tailwind CSS. Of course, we're going to use Tailwind CSS because it's going to be making our lives a lot easier. We don't want to use CSS, and plus we want to make it to market quite quickly because we're building a SaaS. So you don't want to spend like whole life basically building a SaaS. So go with Tailwind CSS in here. Do you want to use this SRC directory? Well, of course, that will basically depend on you whether you like the SRC directory or not. I'm actually a big fan of SRC directory because it just keeps, it tells anybody that opens up your code and tries to look at it that, oh, look, this is basically where the whole logic of the application resides inside of the SRC. So I'm going to click yes for this one. For the app router in here, yeah, you want to use the app router. You want to use the old pages router. And the alias in here, you don't want to change it. You want to use this basic, alias with like @, and you can just import whatever at it. So I'm not going to change that. So I'm going to choose no. And there you go. So it's going to go ahead and install all the dependencies from you using PNPM, and it's going to do the job perfectly. Awesome. So now we got the project created. So all you're going to do is you go ahead and do CD inside of the project itself. So inside of SaaS template, you CD into that one. And if you have VS Code or any other code to install, of course, if you have VS Code, you can just use the code CLI in here and you do the dot to make sure you open up the current projects inside of a new VS Code instance. And VS Code will basically go ahead and open up for you. And there you go, you can find your VS Code and it's in here open with, all the project files and node modules installed and everything that you need. Now, when it comes to the latest Next.js version, as of right now, it's actually Next.js 15 and it's actually in the release candidate mode. So it's not available for production just yet, but it's really close to that. So if you're just studying a project right now, maybe you can go ahead and give this one a try. So you can just simply go and install this using next@rc, and both for React as well and React Dom, because React right now, it has like the React 19 RC as well, which has the React compiler. It has a lot of awesome features. So you might want to actually wait a little bit of time since this one is going to be, generally available. Or what I would do is actually use the current Next.js version, which is Next.js 14, and actually upgrade as soon as this one is actually available, because there isn't any breaking changes as far as I know from like moving from React 14 to 15. Only a small ones like partial re-rendering here or pre-rendering on the experimental. There's caching in here is like not forced on the fetch, and it supports React 19 and just basically like a couple of stuff in here. So there isn't much going on and there isn't much of breaking changes that you can worry about. So that should be very, very smooth upgrade. So the next thing I would go ahead and get started setting up all my projects right away is linting, and specifically using something like ESLint. So likely for us, Next.js comes pre-installed and pre-configured with ESLint in here. So all you simply just go ahead and need to do is simply just include inside of your scripts in here or inside of the package.json in the scripts objects. You put lints and next lint in here to run the next lint command, and Next.js will take care of everything that needs to be installed. So inside of the package.json in here in your project, you're going to find the lint in here because we already configured that when we were setting up the projects. But if you don't have it already, you can just go ahead and add it. And you've got the ESLint RC in here .json that is already configured for you. So here you can notice that this one extends the next core web vitals, which is like the stricter version of ESLint configuration, but it's actually the recommended one. It will basically just prevent you from shooting yourself in the foot and having or doing things the wrong way. So I really recommend going with this one. But if you're just getting started with ESLint or you're not really familiar with that, you can just go with the base configuration. And right after ESLint, you want to go ahead and set up a formatter. And the best formatter right now is actually available for Next.js and JavaScript in general is Prettier. So it's pretty straightforward, it's pretty easy and very, very reliable. So you can just go ahead into the prettier.com in here for installation of Prettier. And there's actually two ways if you install Prettier, whether you want to install it as a dependency inside of your projects, which I don't really recommend unless you want to use that inside of the CI or inside of your build pipeline. You can do that easily, but you don't want to actually go ahead and every single time you want to do formatting, you want to run that from the CLI. So you want to use something like, setting up your editor to use an extension for Prettier. And of course, because you're using VS Code, there's a really nice extension in here that has been downloaded more than 45 million times. It's Prettier in here. You can just easily install it and you are good to go. And for configuration, you can use the default Prettier configuration, but I really recommend just going to writing out .prettierrc in here, like a file configuration where you put all your Prettier configurations. So you have like semi in here if you want to use semicolon or single quotes. I want to force like single quotes in here and no semicolons, or I really like semicolons, so I'm just going to use that one as well. And the last part in here you need to set up a Prettier is actually adding the ESLint config Prettier in here inside of your project to tell ESLint that you're actually using like Prettier, and this is basically the tool that you are using with, so it doesn't have any conflict. So simply just go ahead and copy this one and install it, and go back into your ESLint RC in here and make sure you add Prettier in here as the next configuration on the extends. And the other tool that you need is called lint stage in here, which by the name you thought you might have already guessed that what it does. It basically only lints the files that are currently Git staged. So it doesn't lint everything, it only lints the files that are, that are currently staged inside of Git, which makes it a huge improvement in terms of user experience, and I really, really like this one. So for installation, of course, you just go and copy lint stage in here, and you can use npm or pnpm. I'm going to go back in here, and I'm going to, of course, use pnpm add and lint stage in here. So that should just go ahead and install that library for us. And lint stage actually depends on another tool. It's called Hasky that will allow you to use Git hooks very easily, because lint stage will basically listen for the commit Git hook. So you could run the lint stage and run the linting right before you commit. And plus, you're only just going to run for currently staged files. So the installation is very, very straightforward. So you just go ahead and install Hasky in here as a development dependency, and then you go ahead and initialize Hasky. So going back to the terminal in here, pnpm add save dev Hasky in here will install Hasky itself, and we can go back and actually copy this source code or the code snippet for initializing Hasky inside of our project. And now if you look at the top in here, .ascii, there's a new folder that's been created for us, and there's this pre-commit, which is the pre-commit sort of Git hook that will, you give it just a command in here that's what is actually going to be running. And for example, immediately he's just running pm test to run test immediately. And here you make sure you do lint-stage. So you just use lint stage in here with pm. So whenever there is a pre-commit or whenever the user is trying to commit something, commit staged files particularly into your, Git version control, this command in here is going to be running right before the commit. So pre-commit. Now, last but not least, you need to go ahead and configure the lint stage. So you need to create a configuration for lint stage in here and copy this code in here to build the actual ESLint command to make sure it works with Next.js. So you can do it the other way if you're not using Next.js, but if you're using Next.js, this is the recommended way of doing it. So just go ahead and copy this code in here, and I'm just going to go back to my project. I can do .lint staged or just rc. There you go, just click enter in here and paste the code that you've got. So this will go ahead and run ESLint correctly. So if you want to go ahead and test that out, I'm going to do git add right over here. I'm going to do git commit in here. I'm going to just do initial commit. So click enter, you're going to notice that lint stage is going to be running. And yeah, I completely forgot that this needs to be a JavaScript file. So .javascript right over there. I'm just going to run that again. So git commit, there you go. So no stage files match any configured tasks. And it's just going to commit for me. So right here, it's told me basically that you don't have any configurations that match the current tasks in here. So that means because I haven't made any changes to any TypeScript files in here, I'm only specifying JavaScript or TypeScript files that need to be linted. So this is basically like the, what it's telling you in here. There's no stage files match any configured task. So this is basically the task in here we have configured. So this tells us that lint stage is working perfectly. Now, when it comes to where you want to host your code, I would say most definitely the simple option in here, the obvious option is GitHub, because right now it has like unlimited public and private repositories, and because you're building a SaaS, you want to go with a private repository in here. It has a bunch of cool stuff in here that are just free for you, and because you're just starting a SaaS, I think this free tier in here is going to be far more than enough. Plus, the price in here isn't that much if the team ever grows. All right, so we're done with that one. Now, when it comes to actual styling, what would you choose if you're just starting new projects right now? So obviously, the first and the most obvious choice in here is going with Tailwind CSS because it's going to make your life easier. You can create stuff very, very easily, and you can find a bunch of components out there in the internet freely available, and you can easily copy paste and reuse without much of headache. So I really recommend going Tailwind CSS every single time. Even though you feel like you're not going to need that much, you will need it at some point. The next one is Chassis in here because it provides you with really awesome components in here, like Vercel's kind of like inspired sort of like UI components that are made using Tailwind CSS and Redux UI, which are both great libraries. And the Chassis in here just is pretty great. It has so many components in here. If you just go to the components, you're gonna find a bunch of components that you can easily go and copy paste, or you can use this simple command in here. It's gonna right install the component source code right into your project in here, and it's gonna use Tailwind CSS as well. So this is basically the perfect one right now, and it's very easy. And the user experience using this one is just insane. Next, if you're an animation lover like I do, AUTH in here is really great library here that provides you with built-in components that has animations built in right into it already. Really crazy awesome animations like this one, or even if you want to go ahead and like browse all the components. For example, this MacBook Pro scroll in here, you can find like, really crazy landing page sort of animation here if you just scroll down. Maybe if you want this 3D effect card in here, look, it looks pretty sick. And it even gives you the code in here, so you can just copy paste that one. And the awesome part of this one, because we're using Tailwind CSS already, so this uses Tailwind as well, and you can just copy paste it. Now, when it comes to styling and reusing sort of like Tailwind classes, because we all know that you can really easily mess up the Tailwind sort of classes or maybe duplicate them, and just, you don't want to repeat yourself so much, and you want to use like a library that's going to actually handle all of that Tailwind CSS sort of messy classes for you. Well, CVA in here, or class variance authority in here, is really going to solve your problem. I've been using it for quite some time here, and it's really great. And believe me, it really provides and makes your life quite easier. And that's what basically ChatCN already uses. So it's going to allow you to put stuff like this, where variants and stuff, like you create a button in here with different variants and all using the Tailwind CSS classes. And you can literally just go and use that button in here with like providing an instance or a size or whatever variants you defined already. And this will actually switch up this classes as however you like. And if you want to include vanilla CSS inside of your code with Next.js and you don't want any runtime overhead, well, this library is for you and it's specific for Next.js. Just gonna do everything is gonna generate all the static CSS files at build time. Yes, at build time. So it will allow you basically to do something like this, where you can just create a style in here with a different bunch of like vanilla CSS kind of properties, like flex in here, flex direction, selectors, even media queries in here. And all at the end, it's going to generate a CSS or a class name right for you in here. And this class name is going to be generated at build time. Like the CSS for this class name here is going to be generated at build time. So you just ship everything as a static CSS in here, no runtime overhead, and this will boost the productivity. Plus the API is really, really nice, and because it uses like Typescript and the power of CSS, it's just going to make your life with CSS quite easier. And last but not least, for styling in here, we're going to use Next Themes, which is a nice library that's going to allow you to integrate themes, or sort of like a theme style where you can, toggle between dark mode and light mode, or maybe system mode inside of your Next.js application. Very, very easy. So it's very easy to install, very easy to integrate with the app router in here or the pages directory. This is quite easy as well. All right, so now for the setup, we've already got Tailwind CSS set up for us by default by using Next.js or the create Next.js or the create Next app CLI that we've already used, and the project already has Tailwind CSS, so that's good. Next thing in here is actually installing ChatCN. So ChatCN in here is going to actually, it doesn't require that much. All it requires in here, just like running this basic command like npm or npx ChatCN in here, UI, latest, and initialize. So you can go and copy the PNPM version of this. It's going to basically ask you a couple of questions in here, like the default color theme and where you want to put your CSS variables and stuff, and what like fonts in here you want to use. For you want to use the default font in here. So simply just paste the command inside of your terminal in here. Just go ahead and click into your PNPM, DLX, ChatCN UI latest, and initialize. So it's going to ask you whether you want to use the default or New York. I don't know. You can go with whatever. I'm going to go with New York in here, and I'm going to go with the slate version colors. You want to use CSS variables for colors? Yes. And that should be good. So I'm just going to install all the dependencies needed, and we're good to go. So once everything is good and set up, you can go ahead and add, for example, any of these components in here using this command. So you can do npx, ChatCN UI latest, add, and you can specify whatever component in here. Of course, you're going to find the documentation inside of any component there. But of course, let's go ahead and just try to run that through PNPM. I'm going to add a simple button. So I'm going to do the same thing in here. I'm just going to paste that one, go ahead and add a simple button. And you're going to notice inside of the src, and right inside of the components, and you're going to find a new folder called UI, and you're going to have all of your UI components made for you. And exclusive in here, it already uses CVA. So it already did install class various authority for us, because ChatCN actually uses that because it's really, really nice and makes things a lot simpler. And now when it comes to AC Eternity, you don't basically need to do any setup, because each component in here can be easily copy pasted as long as you're using Next.js and Tailwind CSS, as we already do. So for example, I go to the Sparkle sort of components, and if I scroll down, it's going to tell me, oh, these are, specific dependencies specific for this particular component in order to make it work, that needs to be installed to make this work. So you can just go and copy this one in here, go back, and of course, every single time you're going to go back and paste that inside of the terminal. So this will install Frame of Motion for animation, CLX in here, which is just basically for managing class names, and Tailwind Merge in here for fixing the merge conflicts between the different Tailwind CSS classes. And these TS particles, I don't know, but they feel like they are responsible for putting articles. So yeah, I'm not using npm, so I need to just do pnpm add, and I'm going to add all of these. So let me just remove npm in here, and I can just go ahead and add all of these again. So after the installation, it's going to ask you to add the utilities. We've already added this utility with ChatCN, so we're good to go in that regard. And now it gives us the full source code of that components if we ever want to use it. So if you ever want to use it, just going to copy paste that one, and this will just basically give you the sys sort of component right over here, or the previous component, sorry. So you can just go back to, for example, components in here. I can go ahead and create a folder and name this sparkles or something, and I can just do index.tsx. and I can copy or basically paste the whole thing in here. So this should have everything. Now I have utils, but it shouldn't be inside of the utils. It should be inside of the library or lib utils. That's where we have it. That's where chassis and stuff put it. So that should be good to go. And now you can modify that component however you like. You can do whatever you want with it, but this will just give you a simple boilerplate that you can copy paste and use and modify however you like. Now the next thing in here is the CVA or class variance authority. I've already set up this. Chassis actually did already the setup for us in here. So if we're going to go ahead and check out how this works, basically just like if you look at the CVA in here, instead of like the button component we added from chassis and library, it's importing this CVA from class variance authority. It's importing this variant props. So first it uses this CVA as a function. You give it like the default styles that are going to be like applied by default to the components. So this is basically like, our Tailwind CSS classes. So any Tailwind or any valid Tailwind CSS class, you can put it right over there. The next thing in here is actually an object configuration. It takes variants and you can put whatever variant you want. So for example, I can name my variants in here a variant, and this can have these values. For example, default, destructive, outline, secondary, ghost, and link. And these are actually like the button different variants. So for example, default, this is actually the Tailwind CSS styles I'm going to be applying. For example, destructive, this is what I'm going to apply as Tailwind CSS classes, and so on and so forth. The second variant in here, for example, this is the variance. The second one is the size. So how big or small I want the button. So you can have like default, small, large, or icon. And here, right after the variance sort of object or configuration objects, you can put default variants, and these what you tell them to apply by default. For example, I want for my variants in here, I want to apply the default one, and the size I want to apply the default one as well. Now later on, we got this button variant. So if you want to use this one, use this one, you can put your button component normally in here, and you can just, because this, when you call this function, you can pass it the variants that you have, including as well, or plus a class name. So you can customize the class name in here, and this will go ahead and return for you a string. So if you notice, this will basically go ahead and return a string for you. So this string will be a class name with all the other class names, which just makes it so nice and magical. All right, the other one that we want to set up for vanilla CSS now is vanilla extract. So vanilla extract is quite easy to set up as well, and it has a specific configuration to be installed with Next.js projects. So you can just go and install this plugin in here. So I've already put that instead of terminal. So the first, you want to install vanilla extract /CSS. And the second one, you want to go and install the vanilla extracts in here next plugin, and make sure you save both of those as development dependencies. And you also want to tell Next.js that we are using this one. So you want to just go inside of Next.js in here. You see this, we just require the vanilla extract next plugin. And just because you go ahead and use this with the vanilla extract utility function in here, so just pass it with vanilla extract again in here, just because it's a function. So it can just pass it the next config in here and make sure to return that or export as default, and you're good to go. All right, so how it works, very simply, all you gotta do in here, just create a style. You create a file named like whatever in here, for example, styles. You have to use .css, then .typescript in here, or .javascript. So here, it literally telling you the style sheet can be made by adding .css.typescript file into your project. So you have to do that, otherwise it's not gonna be working. So once you do that, you can just gonna copy this code in here. I can go back, for example, inside of the src in here, I can go ahead and create like styles sort of folder, and I can just put, I don't know, app.css.typescript in here. As you can see, the color icon change in here. That means it recognizes that. Now I can import that from vanilla extract /CSS, which is the style utility. And here, the style utility, you can put whatever you want inside of it. So like there's padding, any CSS or any vanilla CSS sort of property, you can put it in there, and it's going to return for you a class that you can export this class, and you can use it however you like. So for example, let's say I want to use that alongside the button as well. So you see we're using this to basically merge whatever we have. So I can just go ahead and do like, because we already got a container, so I can go ahead and import the container from styles.up.css. So the container should be imported. This is because it's going to be a string, and it should work fine. As you can see, it's not really complaining about any issues. Now, what about animation? I'm pretty sure animation is a very crucial part of any project, especially nowadays. Animation or animating your landing pages and making them sort of interactive has been a crucial part in gaining, users, making it look sick and awesome. and just creating this look and feel that makes it just look so elegant. So of course, the favorite choice for me for using animation or the animation library, first choice I would choose blindly every single time is Framer Motion. Of course, this is made by the team behind Framer, which is like a website or no code sort of website builder that is absolutely amazing. And this is the library that powers that website, that no code sort of builder. And this library has just like been there forever. It's been used in so many other projects, has a really nice, easy to use API with React, and is straight to the point. So the installation of Framer Motion is straightforward. All you gotta do is just npm install framer-motion and you're good to go. So we already did install that with a eternity before. The library did install Framer Motion for us, but you can do that if you haven't already. And the one component that you're gonna need is the motion component that's gonna have literally all the components that you can, allow you to do all the animations. So for example, I can put, a quick animated div in here on my, landing page in here or page.tsx by just going and importing the motion from Framer Motion. So if I go back in here, I just go on the top, import motion from Framer Motion, and this will go ahead and import motion in here, and it can do all the different properties that Framer Motion supports for like while hover, for like specific gestures or drag constraints or something like that. Now, the next crucial part of any SaaS application or any web project out there is actually adding authentication to it. And of course, authentication is a very tricky part, very hard to implement and maintain, and it will take a lot of research and a lot of implementation time. So luckily for us, Next.js has this really awesome library that gives you out-of-the-box sort of functions and providers that you can just easily use to integrate authentication right into your Next application. It's called NextAuth.js in here. It has a bunch of providers, and what I mean by providers in here, so if you go to the providers documentation in here, you're gonna notice like you can use Atlassian, Apple in here, for example, Auth0, maybe there is like Google in here, one is GitHub, like OAuth. There's a bunch of stuff, and it supports most of like the OAuth services in here and different providers if they're out there available, or even like adapters where you're gonna use it for something like Firebase or maybe Drizzle, dgraph, PouchDB, Prisma. All of those are available as well. So the installation is very straightforward. So if you go to the introduction here or simply just getting started, all you gotta do is just npm install NextAuth inside of your projects. But for the configuration in here, it will be a little bit messy because there's so many moving parts, and you can, it depends on how you want to implement the authentication itself. For example, if we use GitHub, we do it this way. If we want to use Google, we do it this way, yada, yada, yada. So like it kind of like goes on, and it depends exactly what you want to go with. So I'm not going to go into all the details for that, but likely for you guys, I've already put a video tutorial like quite some time ago, but it's still very updated and it has really awesome knowledge. I think a lot of people love the video, by the way. So if you go to my channel and you go to add authentication, you're going to find a link in the description below. Like add authentication to Next.js in 10 minutes. You're going to find how to add OAuth with email and password authentication here right into your Next.js application. And this will just show you how to set up NextAuth. Or if you don't want to implement authentication from scratch and you don't want to worry about any of that, you can use one of my favorite authentication sort of services, which is called AUTH that is offered or powered by WorkOS, which is AUTH from WorkOS. I mean, the pricing for this one is insane good. So like you get a free for the first million monthly active users, which is a very generous offer, and you only pay for the next millions. So that's a pretty good one, especially for a SaaS. I mean, when are you going to reach a million? Really? So, and it also has like a really nice sort of like developer experience and how you integrate it, a lot of awesome documentation, and I'm in love with their dashboard in here and the different features it offers from authentication, roles, branding, domains, redirects, and so much more going on. And also, if you want to know how to integrate AUTH in here, I've already made a video about like how to integrate AUTH in here with your Next.js application. It's very, very detailed video, so you can just go into my channel, all link description below to learn more about it. Now, when it comes to testing, of course, this is a very crucial point of any project, whether SaaS, small, big, medium projects. Testing or implementing testing strategies inside of your projects is very, very important. So of course, the first one we're going to go with is Jest, because it's a really nice library. It's the best when it comes to unit and integration testing, which we're going to be needing quite a lot because that's what we're going to be implementing a lot at the beginning of when we start a SaaS projects. We're starting to build out our projects. I know sometimes it might feel a little bit tedious to go ahead and do, testing when you're just starting a SaaS. I agree with you. Sometimes you just gotta break the rules and go straight through and build the application and do manual testing, but not implement a lot of testing. that might work, but I really don't recommend it. But if you have a little bit more time, implementing testing is going to save your life or save your time. And for end-to-end testing, I would go with Playwright because it's really easy to install. The CLI offers just like going to install the different type of browsers right away for you. You don't have to do a lot of configuration and everything just happens from the CLI. So as soon as you just click run, it runs and it's very simple and it's open source and it's very, very easy to use. So I really love Playwright. So I've been using it for quite some time right now and it's delightful. All right, now, so for setting up Jest in here, Next.js has a really detailed guide in here. So all you gotta do is just quick start for the manual setup in here because we already have a project. You can go to pnpm install in here and you go to right into your project, do the same thing in here, install all the dependencies because there's so many dependencies in here that needs to be installed alongside like the testing library, the Jest DOM in here, so much going on. So once you do that, you go ahead and actually run this command to create the configuration or to use the Jest CLI to initialize the configuration right away for you. So as soon as you've got that, you can clear the terminal, do the same thing in here, pnpm create Jest at latest, and this will go in and create like a Jest config for you. So let me just collapse all the folders that are currently open. And once you do that, you're going to need to go ahead and create a jest.config.typescript, or I think this will go ahead and create one for you. So would you like to use Jest when running test scripts impact.json? Yes, most definitely. Would you like to use Typescript for configuration file? I think yes, that would be really good. And the environment here, I would really recommend go with GSDOM because that's the most realistic browser-like sort of testing. So GSDOM, do you want to use Jest to add coverage reports? Yes. Do you want to use V8 for Babel? Definitely V8 because that's a lot more better and more performant generally, and automatically clear mock calls, instances, context, and results before every test. So I'm gonna hit yes on this one as well. So this will go in and create a just.config.typescript for us, which is a configuration that has, all the just needed configuration to work with TypeScript and the project we currently have. But for Next.js, you got to go ahead and copy this specific configuration, otherwise it's not going to work for you perfectly. So just go ahead and hit copy on this one and just go back in here and clear everything and paste everything that you've got. So this is the configuration. We use V8, GSDOM, and that's what we've got. And there you go. So now you got testing set up. So inside of your package.json in here, you need to go ahead and have a Jest. It's already added that for you. Jest already added that for us. So there's a new test script in here. So as long it's run, or as soon as it runs, it's just gonna run Jest in here for you. And if you have any test files inside of your projects, they're gonna be running perfectly. Now, what about Playwright? Playwright is very simple to install as well. So all you gotta do, pnpm create Playwright, and this will go ahead and do a bunch of stuff in here. It's gonna basically just allow you to choose TypeScript or not. So this will be very easy. If I go back again to the terminal one more time, clear out the terminal, I'm gonna do pnpm create Playwright. So this will go ahead and run Playwright for me. So there's where do you want to put your end-to-end test? I'm gonna put it on E2AE, right inside of the SRC, I think. Hopefully it's gonna put it inside of the SRC. Do you want to add a GitHub action workflow? You could, but for me, no, I'm not. So I'm not going to complicate it even more. Do you want to install Playwright browsers? Yes, can be done manually. pnpm execute Playwright install, but I want to do them automatically. And this will go ahead and install everything for us. And of course, it's going to install the latest Chromium browser sort of thing for you right away. So once you've got all of those installed for you and all the browsers ready to go, you can go ahead and run this npx playwright test to run a simple testing test. And this will open up a browser window right for you like this, where you've got all the tests running like Chromium, Firefox, or WebKit in here, and you can just see all the different reports and what they'd run, the hooks and stuff like that. So that means Playwright has been installed and set up correctly inside of our projects. All right, so testing is done. Now it's about AI. I'm pretty sure now most of you guys, like 90% of you guys, are trying to start startups or SaaS projects in the AI realm. And of course, when you try to do that, you're looking for a nice, awesome, easy to use AI library, and specifically works perfectly with Next.js. So luckily for us, Vercel has this AI library called the AI SDK in here that actually makes a lot of stuff simple. It integrates with literally anything like Vue.js, any framework like Svelte, Next.js, of course, which is what we're using. You can do a lot of stuff. Any providers in here or the models that are available is actually OpenAI, Anthropic, there is Google, and Mistral. And you can even use your own custom stuff like Llama if you're running it locally or local server or something, or even LangChain. So I'm not going to go into details of how you set up this because it's very easy and it depends on what model you want and how you want to use it. So I just wanted to point out that this is one of the best ones, especially if you're using Next.js, because it has streaming, it has so many awesome options, and the API it kind of offers is so smooth and so developer friendly. Now, for any SaaS project, you would want to accept payments somehow, right? So Stripe is definitely the best one. So Stripe has a really nice, awesome API. I mean, their platform is great. They allow you to accept payments in different types of forms, and they provide you with a lot of tools and stuff to use that. So I'm going to integrate Stripe in here very quickly. And of course, they have a bunch of libraries, and specifically they have a library for React. So there's this React-Stripe.js, which is, specifically like specific components that are made for React specifically. And they're just going to allow you to, import those components, put them in, and you can easily use them. So for example, in here, we've got this Stripe thing. You can just go ahead and install that using, Stripe.js and like both the core library in here and the React library. So I can go back again to the terminal, clear that one. I'm going to use pnpm again in here, and I'm going to add both react-stripe.js and the stripe.js in here. Now, simple as that, once it's installed, you can just, for example, copy their code in here because they have a really nice boilerplate, and it's very easy to integrate. So all you got to do is just link it with your accounts and use the already built-in provided sort of components from Stripe, and you are good to go. So if you go to the SRC in here, for example, go to up in here, I'm going to put that into stripe-page.tsx, for example. I'm going to paste all of this, like what is going on. I don't need, these ones in here, but I'm going to copy these elements because I need to provide those in a second. So I'm just going to copy this one, go and remove the Stripe. I'm going to import the checkout form. Well, events in here can be any. And now you go inside of your layout in here, and you can just put whatever you've got already put for the children to use the Stripe elements. So for example, I can, I've already put the Stripe elements in here. I can go and import them from Stripe itself. I can put that one, and I can remove the checkout form. And make sure to bring both of these, like load Stripe in here, promise, where it basically like loads the Stripe. So I'm not going to go into so much details because that will depend on how things are actually going to be working, but I can import this load Stripe. This is your public key in here to use. So this is the Stripe promise in here. These are actually the option, like the mode, the amounts and stuff, like how much do you want to charge and stuff. And this is a checkout form. So I'm just passing the options in there. But as I said, that will depend on, application, what you're offering, the price you're offering. But that's just a simple example of how Stripe can be integrated. It's very simple. And these, you see this payment element in here is actually being imported from Stripe itself. So if you look into it, we've got this at Stripe, react-stripe.js, and we've got like the payment elements, the use Stripe and use elements. All of those are imported from the library in here, or the React Stripe library, because it provides all the built-in components or already built-in components, so you can easily drag and drop them. All right, now last but not least, for any project, so once you've got all the setup, you want to actually also think about where should I deploy this project? I mean, there's so many options, but the two best options I've actually tried so far, and they work really well. Of course, the most obvious one is Vercel, because it's your Next.js, and Vercel kind of like optimizes your Next.js projects because that's what it's built for, and it's really good. It has really nice features. I love Vercel, so I would go with this every single day. But there's actually a second option in here I've been trying lately, and I'm in love with it, especially their CDN. It's actually, deployed across the whole globe in here, like literally everywhere. They have more than 30 plus regions. They have a really awesome developer experience in here. You don't need to interact with the UIs. You just use the CLI. You initialize once your project with a JSON configuration or YAML configuration, and you're good to go. So this basically allows you to deploy different stuff like Django stuff or JavaScript, which of course what we have in here, Next.js. It's basically what allows you to do specifically is actually deploy Docker containers, and you can put anything inside of those Docker containers, which means simply you can package your Next.js application as a Docker container and you can push it out. We can have other services pushed out as well alongside that Docker container, which gives you a little bit more control over your application. Plus, it just makes it as simple as deploying it to Vercel as well. So if you go over to the Next.js template page in here, or the documentation for Next.js, they're going to just show you step by step how to do the Next.js stuff. For example, you can do fly launch in here, which is a command, and it's going to pre-configure most of the stuff in here, like the regions I'm going to deploy on, if I want to use Postgres or Redis or Sentry or anything of that. And just simple as that, I just put the configuration in here for Next.js and stuff, and a very simple sort of Docker file for me that's going to be auto-generated by fly.launch, which I'm not going to generate by myself. The fly CLI is going to take care of all of that for me behind the scenes. And once that is done, basically, I will just go ahead and push out whatever I've got. For example, this is Supabase. Last step in here, just do fly deploy, and you are good to go. So of course, this is the last step. You probably going to think about. But this is still a very crucial step where you deploy, because that's going to tell you how you maintain your projects. I mean, all the stuff that goes on in deployment. I know it's very, very rubbish thing and a very bad or horrible thing to do, but still, these two platforms can help you a lot.